Some research really demonstrates that even when we're older, we can get more bang for our buck in certain changes than when we're younger. There's no time like the present to begin to make some tweaks, and definitely saying that you're going to end up where your parents or grandparents were for this inevitable decline just simply isn't the truth.
This is Next Level Health. I'm your host, Dr. Melinda Ring, Director of the Osher Center for Integrative Health at Northwestern University. On this show, we explore ways to take actionable steps towards optimizing our health with leaders in the integrative, functional, and lifestyle medicine fields who believe in science-backed and time-tested approaches to well-being. Let's take your health to the next level. Research on healthy aging has exploded over the last several years, but along with that explosion has come a lot of confusion. There's no shortage of advice promising to slow aging, reverse aging, or biohack your way to longevity. The challenge is knowing which strategies are actually supported by science. My guest today is Dr. Kara Fitzgerald, here to help us separate signal from noise and to share what we can realistically start doing today to support healthy aging based on research into methylation, epigenetics, and measurable changes in biological age. Dr. Fitzgerald is a naturopathic doctor, a certified practitioner, and teacher with the Institute for Functional Medicine, and the author of Younger You, Reduce Your Bio-Age, and Live Longer Better, a book grounded in her published clinical research. She was also the first recipient of the Emerging Leadership Award from the Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Institute in recognition of her work on DNA methylation. So we're going to explore what that is and why healthy aging isn't about chasing extra years. It's about slowing decline, preserving function, and living well for as long as possible. Kara, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
If somebody's listening right now and thinking, aging's inevitable, I don't really have any control over how time affects my health, as we're jumping in, do you want them to understand by the end of our conversation about the power they have over how they age?
We really are in the driver's seat of how elegantly our journey to the end goes, and whether we get to live it in a very empowered way or whether we fall into the bucket of average American with multiple diagnoses, multiple medication, where we're honestly, the picture's so grim, where we're spending all of our hard-earned savings that we want to pass down on healthcare and nursing home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
The statistics are really pretty grim. And yet we get to choose whether we go on that trajectory or not. So when we internalize that truth, I think it's incredibly empowering. Some research really demonstrates that even when we're older, we can get more bang for our buck in certain changes than when we're younger. There's no time like the present to begin to make some tweaks, and definitely saying that you're going to end up where your parents or grandparents were for this inevitable decline just simply isn't the truth.
I'm aware of this data that says never too late kind of thing. Are you saying that there's newer research that says that different interventions at different points in our life, or is it really the same basic principles apply no matter what age we're at?
In some ways, obviously, we don't need the same interventions in our 20s and 30s that we might be thinking about in our 40s, 50s, 60s. We have certain kinds of resilience when we're younger. We don't necessarily need to be engaging in some of the interventions. It may not be a great time to be starting, say, rapamycin or thinking about that sort of longevity darling medication. I think that it's fair that there are certain things we're going to lean into and adopt more aggressively as we age. There's cool data on gene expression and exercise, on methylation and exercise. The older we get, we can actually affect gene expression in some cases more potently by incorporating movement than when we were younger. So it's like we can in some ways get more bang for our buck introducing exercise. But the other really cool thing about adopting stuff when we're young is that, if we're pre-conception, like if we've got kids in our plans, that information that your gene expression has adopted from your healthy dietary pattern, and actually there's a heritability component. So,
Yeah.
your family before you, that information sits in your genes, and you can definitely hand on those healthy gene expressions. So if you have a decent exercise habit, it's really important to think about it during preconception, conception,
Hmm.
pregnancy for both partners.
On this podcast, we've had people talk about this idea of biological age versus chronological age, how old your body behaves, not just how many birthdays you've had. And we cannot change the years on the calendar, but that biological age we now know is dynamic and influenced by lifestyle and other things. And one of the main ways that scientists measure biological age is through DNA methylation, gene expression. Your research looks directly at whether changing those signals can actually shift biological age. So I think this term methylation, especially, we won't get into all of the MTHFR and everything, but I think people hear methylation but don't really know what it is. So can you demystify that term for us and explain why it is such a powerful marker?
Methylation, the process of methylation is adding a little itty bitty ubiquitous compound, a carbon with three hydrogens,
Hmm.
or removing that carbon with three
Hmm.
hydrogens from a molecule, and then you just change the structure and the behavior of that molecule. Methylation is just basically happening everywhere in the body for myriad different reasons all of the time. It's incredibly foundational, and we need to be doing a decent job of it. It is true that as we age, we don't methylate as efficiently as we did when we were younger. So this carbon and three hydrogens, it's produced in the methylation cycle. The universal methyl donor, so where that carbon and three hydrogen sits, is something called S-adenosylmethionine, or SAM for short. And then SAM just whirls around the body, helping us to make a billion different compounds, or again, change the structure and function of compounds. So lots of neurotransmitters, hormones, detoxing hormones, changes the structure of fatty acids that are important in brain chemistry, engages in a lot of detoxification of various compounds, environmental toxins, metallotoxins like arsenic and so forth. So it's just buzzing around doing tons of stuff. There are hundreds of enzymes that facilitate these methylation reactions that SAM is a part of. Helps us make adrenaline, helps us make dopamine, etc. And my area of interest is DNA methylation. So methylation, either adding methyl groups or subtracting them, is a huge player in gene expression, turning genes on, turning genes off. Huge in DNA methylation. When there are a lot of methyl groups, and anybody who looks in the scientific literature, you'll see that this methyl group is usually denoted by a red lollipop. So you can see if a region of a gene, a promoter region, is dotted with these little red lollipops or these methyl groups, that gene is really basically inhibited from being turned on. If the red lollipops are gone, then that gene can be expressed. So the red lollipops are there. They can be added through enzymes. They can be subtracted through enzymes. And in this way, it's one of the fundamental ways we regulate gene expression. Our research and research of others demonstrates there's a lot that we can do to sort of optimize gene expression
Hmm.
through the window of methylation. And I want to just back up and talk about the methylation cycle itself. So the process of making SAM, or S-adenosylmethionine, is very nutrient dense. It's the reason that we want to have enough folate in our diet. It's the reason we need B12, choline from eggs. You're told eggs are incredibly important. Choline is a huge player in healthy methylation. Betaine from beets, another thing. Downstream compounds like glutathione, which is just a workhorse detox compound. So it's just like the process of methylation has its tentacles all over physiology, healthy physiology.
When people are like, well, am I a good methylator? Do I need to worry about it? Are you a proponent of biological age testing? And if so, what do we need to think about for that versus, say, should we be testing these nutrient levels, like you said, the B's, homocysteine, et cetera. Like, should everybody be getting those?
If people come to our practice, we're a small sort of boutique practice, and by the time folks end up there, they're either very avid longevity seekers and they've come across our research, or they need a in-depth functional medicine analysis. So people who come to see us, we do tend to cast a wide net with regard to laboratory testing. My background training is in laboratory science, and so I'm very comfortable with sort of looking under the metabolic hood. And I think that it can inform treatment, just really allow us to practice precision treatment. So to that end, yeah, looking at all the essential and unconditionally essential nutrients, including those in the methylation cycle, looking at fatty acids, organic acids, like the whole thing, stool sample.
Some of these other tests, again, maybe falling a little bit more in the biohacky type test about for biological age, like telomere tests and DNA methylation. And do you use those in your practice, either as a motivator or a tracker, just through the research lens? I've seen the same patient have two different types of tests and get drastically different results, where one was like, oh man, I'm like 20 years older than my chronological age. And then they did another test and it was like, I'm 5 years younger than my biological age. Outside of a research setting, what should people look for if they are even thinking about doing that?
One that we're using is called the Dunedin pace of aging. So if you're aging at a rate of 1, you are aging consistent with your chronological age. If your rate is greater than 1, you're aging faster than the rate of your chronological age. If you're less than 1, then you're in a good spot and you're aging slower than your chronological age. So obviously we want to be less than 1. The cool thing about this test, there's just like a lot of really nice science on it. We can affect it, so we can definitely change it with the interventions that we use in functional practice, and we can get change relatively quickly. You could do a baseline pace of aging test, and if you wanted to, in as little as 8 weeks, you could do a follow-up. We've used this in clinic practice. We'll use it in groups where we're doing the dietary pattern that we research, using epigenetic measures like these, looking at biological age. While I like it, it certainly has not supplanted good foundational functional medicine and good foundational laboratory testing.
Yep.
All of our standard labs still have a really important place to play, and this is an additional kind of fun level. We have a quiz for free. It's in the book. So if you have
Yeah.
the book, the quiz
I
is
was going to
there.
bring that up.
You are
That's a very low tech kind of a way to
super
go
low
about
tech.
it, right? Super low tech. So you've published several articles now on your younger you protocol and the impact that it had reducing biological age. And there's the diet you mentioned, and then of course almost Luzoni like in terms of similar lifestyle type things with movement and stress and sleep and all those kinds of things. But I think what I'd like to dive into it is what you've mentioned about the diet. So you have a specific dietary protocol that you recommend, and I think there's 2 phases of it. Can you go through what your recommended diet was for and remains for your patients and for listeners who are
Mm.
interested in a younger you?
Yeah. And again, the cool thing is that this is available. This is free. You can access this
Yeah.
dietary pattern without needing to put out any money. It's in our research. Every publication that we've had so far, it just includes the snapshot of what the diet looks like. It's got a ton of polyphenols. It's got and those are plant phytochemicals. They're just extraordinarily potent and powerful for keeping the body healthy in many different ways, and really for optimizing gene expression. They're super important players. So the dietary pattern is very dense in those. We called those in our research methylation adaptogens, and now we're calling them epinutrients superfoods, or something a little bit more general. There's lots of cool human data coming out really corroborating the power of our dietary pattern with their own studies. Like we can see the Mediterranean dietary pattern. We can see that a high polyphenol dietary pattern is just incredibly smart,
Yeah,
just incredibly
every day
smart.
another study
Yeah.
published
Yeah.
about
That's right.
pops up in my email every day.
Yeah,
Prevents
it's super
stroke, prevents this. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
it
But
is
yours is a
amazing.
little, I mean, I noticed, so maybe in the intro, there was some traditional foods like liver, eggs
Yeah.
you mentioned as being the choline rich, and
Yes.
then grass-fed meat.
Yes.
And I think those are
A little
maybe
bit
not
different.
as
Yeah.
emphasized in what we think of as a traditional Mediterranean style diet. Can you
Yes.
talk about why those are included? I know you mentioned the
Mhm.
eggs a bit, and the eggs, the choline is in the yolk, right? It's
That's right.
so for people like me
Yeah.
who like my egg white omelets, you got to actually do the yolk. So maybe talk about why those ended up in yours versus just saying like eat a Mediterranean diet.
Yeah. So we wanted to do a potently anti-inflammatory diet, sweet talking DNA methylation. So
Yeah.
our goal was specifically on optimizing gene expression, optimizing DNA methylation. And so we scoured the literature. Most of it was animal and cell studies, but we put the dietary pattern together based on our clinical experience and training, and then best read on the literature. So there's two classes of dietary components in it. So there's the methylation adaptogens or epinutrients, and these are the polyphenol rich compounds that we share with Mediterranean diets. And then we were a little bit to the left of the Mediterranean dietary pattern in that we want people to be eating a lot of foods rich in methyl donors. So going back to the beginning of our conversation, that methylation cycle that I said is very nutrient dense and demanding, and it's happening all the time and basically all of the cells of the body and is very important for gene expression. We wanted that to be sort of actively making S-adenosylmethionine. And we know that we do that less effectively as we age. I mean, as a physician, your older patients are more likely to have a higher homocysteine being kind of a classic blood marker of whether the methylation cycle is functioning. It's standard that we see homocysteine creep up over
Hmm.
the years. And that's kind of a surrogate or a suggestion that methylation elsewhere, including on gene expression, isn't happening well. So we wanted to just pack the diet as full as we could. Liver is a superfood. That's just the bottom line. It's basically a multivitamin mineral in a food matrix, which makes it more bioavailable than just taking sort of a hard tablet and hoping that your stomach acid adequately break it down. So lots of liver, eggs, specifically for the choline. Mushrooms are dense in, well, methylation adaptogens, the plant phytochemicals, but also choline, even folate. We wanted meats because of, again, more B12 and the minerals involved in methylation. So we just wanted to support methylation from all angles. So the foods help keep the methylation cycle functioning, and then those foods, and then the phytochemicals can help direct how and where methylation happens. Another thing that happens, so as we age, we stop methylating as efficiently. And methylation on the genome starts to become what we call aberrant. Like we don't do as good of a job. We will start to turn off genes that would be better left on. We'll start to allow genes to turn on that are promoting the chronic diseases of aging. In particular, there's a lot of science in cancer. When we look at cancer gene expression, we see that cancer will hijack epigenetic expression, that the tumor microenvironment, and it will turn off certain genes that protect us, the tumor suppressor genes, and it will turn on a class of genes called oncogenes, which push cancer forward. When you look at an aging epigenome, you actually see the same thing. As we age, we turn off, we hypermethylate tumor suppressor genes, the genes that protect us from cancer, and we turn on these oncogenes. That's a big reason, actually, that the aging journey, biological aging, is the biggest risk factor for developing cancer and really all of the chronic diseases of aging and even the infectious diseases like COVID. So there is this aberrant methylation and particularly DNA methylation process happening as we age. And we wanted to pull out all of the stops with the dietary pattern as well as the lifestyle interventions to help cut that off at the pass. And we were able to show in our research that we did do that. We'll have a study coming out in the not so distant future looking beyond the clocks, just looking to more broadly gene expression in our study cohort. And we can see that we just changed it favorably.
Let's focus on women for a second and maybe the role of organ-specific aging and ovarian health and things like that. What do we need to be thinking about, and how does that play into women's long-term health?
Polyphenols, these plant phytochemicals, are just no joke. We can see that our dietary pattern is incredibly helpful for ovarian health, for women's health more broadly, for protecting us again from cancer, from the chronic diseases of aging, breast cancer, keeping our tumor suppressor genes on and humming. But there's cool research on just the power of polyphenols. The diet is low glycemic. It's a good foundational, very healthful dietary pattern that is helpful for us as women in keeping us strong, keeping our bones strong, helping us through the transition. We're clinicians first before we became clinical researchers, and we used this diet in practice for years. So you'll see a table in the book on how you can adapt the dietary pattern for the human being sitting in front of you. So you can individualize it, you can add it if you're vegan, if you're not, if you're allergic to food X, if you've got small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, if you have MS. Yeah. This dietary pattern is the foundation. You put the methylation information in there, and then you mix it for this human in front of you. If it's somebody working on conception or if it's a woman carrying a child, obviously you want to turn the volume up heavy duty on protein. You want to turn the volume up on certain types of methyl donors. And we cover how to individualize using the core tenets of it in the book. And we've got a lot of experience doing that in practice.
So when you're saying ovarian rejuvenation, you're not talking about ovarian implants and things like that. You're saying we can rejuvenate our health and our ovaries and hormones through good diet and polyphenol intake and things like that.
This dietary pattern can help us stay strong and balanced. It's not going to supplant HRT. Yep. You can modify the dietary pattern to turn the volume up on phytochemicals that have estrogenic benefit, et cetera, et cetera. So you could tweak it as needed. So it's a foundationally useful dietary pattern for women. And then on top of that, you layer in what you need to for individual needs. This is not going to take over HRT. However, we know that hot flashes, we know that some of the downfall of the menopausal journey is exacerbated considerably by poor diet and lifestyle. So certainly using this can help with the transition journey for sure.
I always like to end with this question, which is, if you could share one piece of personal wisdom or one small doable practice that listeners could start today to support their biological age and reach their own next level of health, what would it be?
I would say that we want to be thinking about getting phytochemicals into our dietary pattern on a daily basis. Like if I really honestly have to whittle it down to one thing.
Yeah.
I have at my side here on the floor, I have a giant, pretty well-designed salad. All of that is information. It's dense in polyphenols, and there's some chicken on top. So I've got a decent chunk of protein on there as well. The salad dressing is rich in herbs. Herbs are phytonutrients extraordinaire. And I think we are coming into an era where the power of polyphenols, the power of phytochemicals is being recognized and appreciated in a more powerful way than before, because we have the tools to see what they're doing. We can see how they're transformed by the microbiome and what they're doing systemically. And, you know, we can't underestimate the power of them. So I always am mindful to put that information in my body. And when I can't get it in diet, I will pop some supplements. Like I'm known to take some green tea. I'm known to take some Himalayan tartary buckwheat or some curcumin and so forth. So I'm bullish on the power of that information on physiology.
So, Kara, thank you for such a grounded and hopeful conversation. For me, really reframe methylation not as just something abstract or technical, but a reminder that our biology is listening. It's listening to the food, especially to stress, to sleep, to how we live. That gives people more agency than many of them realize. For everyone listening, we'll link to Kara's research and writings in the show notes. And as always, remember, longevity isn't about chasing youth. It's about preserving vitality, curiosity, and capacity for the long run. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on Next Level Health. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Next Level Health. I hope you found some inspiration and practical insights to enhance your wellness journey. Don't forget to leave a comment on YouTube or review on Apple Podcasts. I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for future topics or speakers. Be sure to follow Next Level Health with me, Dr. Melinda Ring, as we continue exploring the path to healthier, happier lives together.